So now we turn to a panel made up of former and current MSP deans. Many of you will, well, most of you will know at least one of them, who is probably your dean, and many of you will know several of them. Their biographies are in the program and give the time frames of their service as MSP dean. Indeed, there was a time for a few months I was the acting MSP dean myself. So it's my great pleasure to call up, what? I'm sorry. Marcia Brown, who will moderate this now.
Is my mic on? Can you hear me? Is my mic on? It doesn't sound like it's on. Okay. All right, well, good morning, and welcome to MSP50. I would like to call up the 6 illustrious deans who have been the torch runners over 50 years of this program that I will have the distinct pleasure of talking to for the next 45 minutes. So will Oliver Quinn, Wade Henderson, Janice Robinson, Kenny Padilla, Yvette Bravo Weber, and our newest sister from the South, Rhasheda Douglas. I won't tell you about their illustrious histories. Their bios are in your book. They're all remarkable, but since MSP is more than a soundbite, it's really been a journey. That's what we really want to talk to them about today, about that journey. And I want to ask you to create a special moment this morning, because MSP has not been a soundbite, but a journey. I want to ask you to stand. And I want to ask you, while you're standing, to think about those 50 years, to think about the moment when we were all admitted, to think about the faculty that we learned from, to remember Arthur Kanoy and the fundamental contradiction, and to remember Dorothy Roberts, and to remember the ways in which we struggle to get through this journey. Yes, MSP50 is an experience, and we're here to commemorate it and to celebrate it. So let's put our hands together in a big way for this program. Yay! Woohoo! Yes, yes. And by the way, Mildred forgot to give us our resolution from the city, so we do have that. Ron, would you? Thank you. All right, so it's been a while. For me, let me put on my glasses. We were gonna play Ain't No Stopping Us Now when you guys came in, but you know, folk was saying that wouldn't be lawyer-like. But we're not trying to be lawyer-like today, this morning. We're really trying to look at a program that has been one of the great narratives of the 20th century. A program that one commentator said bridged the great divide between inequality and equality and made it an elegant experience. And these 6 people have been the torch runners, passing the baton over the 50 years. They actually represent 37 years of MSP deanship. 37 years of keeping this program alive. And when you think about MSP as the journey, inquiring minds would want to at least think about, well, what was it like in the beginning when there was no history, no footprints for this program? And it takes me to asking Wade and Oliver, who were here in the early stages, especially Wade, who was the second dean after Alfred Slocum, and to talk about what it was like then. You know, what were the challenges? What were the struggles? What were the risks even that were apparent then. So Wade, could you just talk to us a
Wow.
little bit about that?
Well, thank you, Marcia, and good morning, friends and colleagues. This is such an extraordinary gathering, and it is so incredible to see all of you here, not just the friends from the past, but obviously the students who are here today. Let me start first by acknowledging Nancy Cantor, who was recognized at the outset, but as the Chancellor of the University here in Newark, let me thank you for taking the lead in helping to make this program today possible and your continued support for the law school. So thank you so much. Obviously, we have extraordinary leadership in Dean Chen and our Associate Dean and others who have really worked on this program. But there are two missing spirits in the room today, and I want to acknowledge both of them before I proceed. One is the great Dean Willard Heckel, who presided over the formation of MSP back in 1968. And Dean Heckel's presence continues to sort of guide, his spirit continues to guide this effort. And secondly, Professor Alfred Slocum. Alfred, you know, whether you had Alfred at a class or whether you had the professor in other contexts, Professor Slocum was the spirit behind the MSP program. Without him, there would not have been an MSP program as we know it. And so I miss him sorely, and I'm sorry he couldn't be here today, but we salute him. Look, I think everyone knows that this program really grew out of the rebellion in Newark of 1967. And that experience imbued this program with an extraordinary sense of mission. And in the very first years of the MSP program, and I happened to be the first assistant dean and director of MSP, Alfred was a professor in the law school, even at the time of his direction of the program, so I was arguably the first assistant dean. Senator Menendez, who spoke just a minute ago, set forth really, I think, a vision of what this program is about in a way far more eloquent than I. But I take credit for admitting him into Rutgers. I take credit for admitting him into Rutgers, and his story about his experience both in high school and in college, I remember from his application. Senator Menendez and the many other hundreds of students who came to this law school during that period embodied a sense of mission that was reflected in the applications that they provided, in a sense of how they wanted to use their careers, even though they had a very different view of how to practice law. And regardless of whether you practice with a firm or whether you devoted your entire career to the public defender service or legal services, that sense of mission is reflected in the great work of the graduates of this law school and continues to be. I think our calling card vis-a-vis the rest of the established bench and bar. This room is filled with individuals who have devoted their entire careers to social change. And they have achieved incredible and extraordinary effects. So I will summarize and I'm done. Look, when I took this job, I felt a sense of responsibility to be an exemplar of the excellence of the program heretofore, to try to be someone whose professional activity reflected the aspirations and hopes of the students who were then in school, as well as those unknown who might aspire to become lawyers. I was part of that first generation of lawyers who had come of age during the struggles of the 1960s, and the affirmative action programs offered us an opportunity to demonstrate our ability to bring about social change while at the same time maintaining the excellence that this program has come to symbolize. And so I felt that my role as the assistant dean was to reflect that in everything that we did, and I was very proud to do it. I will end with this one note. The program was in existence only for 2 years before the concept of affirmative action was challenged in the federal courts. So I graduated in 1973, but in 1974, when I first stepped in as the assistant dean, when I took over 73, 74, the Supreme Court was rendering its decision in DeFunis versus Odegaard, the very first so-called reverse discrimination case that the federal court considered. And from that point forward, this program operated under challenge. So we had to be mindful of, yes, the social mission that the program was intended to reflect, but at the same time had to be smart and strategic and politically astute in knowing how to put together a program that could be sustained and would sustain itself through the excellence of its graduates. And I'm so proud to have been the first assistant dean, but to have turned this work over to these extraordinary individuals who join me on this stage is a reflection of the great tradition that this law school has come to represent. So thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you, Wade. Thank you for that summary, because it gives us a sense of the drama and the struggle associated with the early stages of this program. And I won't take it personally that Wade admitted me and then left. So I won't take that personally. But I do want to go over to Oliver, because Oliver was dean in the years 77 to 81. And one of the things he said was that when he came back, he faced discussions, debates, papers, and protests. So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. It's great to be back. In my never-ending efforts to keep pace with Wade Henderson, who admitted Senator Menendez, I'm proud that I admitted Dean Chin to the law school. And there are a number of other people who I admitted who are working in various parts of the institution. I held quite a number of jobs throughout my career, all of which I left voluntarily. I wasn't run out. And it's so easy for me to constantly assert that my favorite job was running the minority student program. Hands down, it was the most satisfying. I was 27 years old when I became assistant dean here. With all due respect to those of you in the room who were my students, most of y'all were older than me and brought me situations that I had not yet experienced. So it was a daunting task, but it was also it was a formative experience for me. And then seeing the people who took the program over after I left and what they've done, it's an honor to be part of this group. I touched MSP in 3 different ways. I was a student through the MSP, then I ran the MSP, and then I am the father of an MSP graduate. So I've had a number of different angles. My son claims that the most important was that I'm father of an MSP graduate, and I really don't debate that with him. When I came, the handoff was from Wade Henderson and then Monroe Bolton. Al Slocum was still here. He had gone back to the faculty. And that's important for a reason that I'll mention in a minute. There were 2 significant challenges that I'll mention. One was that at the end of my first year here, there was a major Supreme Court decision, the Bakke case. And the Bakke case, the Bakke decision was complex because it gave a little bit of something to all sides of the issue. I mean, I think it was the classic legal punt. So whatever side of the issue you were on, you could find something in the Bakke opinions that supported you. There were people on the faculty and in New Brunswick who held that the Bakke decision was the death knell for the minority student program, because at that time we operated under a 2-track admissions process. There were others of us who believed that it didn't necessarily hold for that. And what ensued was a series of discussions, debates, a process at the law school that was fascinating. We were able to say to the faculty who taught us that you taught us well. And one of the things that you taught us was to recognize a decision that was not as definitive as you're portraying it to be. So let's have this argument. And out of that came a reconstructing of the minority student program to broaden the eligibility criteria and work our way around whatever legal obstacles resulted from Bakke. That and the institutionalizing of the program. One of the things that I did was try to get responsibility for something beyond the minority student program, because I began to feel like we were out here on this limb, and politically it might be easy to cut that limb and end the program. So I was able to get responsibility for financial aid for the entire student body, which allowed me to be more of an institutional officer and not just out here on this limb. But what really allowed us to navigate through that Bakke morass was the active involvement of the faculty. I spent a tremendous amount of time nurturing relationships with individual faculty members who ran the gamut in terms of their attitudes towards the minority student program, but who were dedicated to the law school and wanted these students to succeed. And without the faculty's support, not just with words, but with actions, we would not have been able to work our way through that. We also had we had a very activist student body. I mean, we had students who wanted to be into everything. And it was challenging to get them to understand that the most powerful political move they could make was to be successful in the academics. That if they succeeded academically, then they armed me with what I needed to fight the battles that needed to be fought in order to preserve the program. So for me, those were the major challenges, and you all are proof that we were successful.
Yeah. So, and Oliver continues to serve this institution. He is now the chair of the Rutgers University Newark Advisory Board, and we lean on him quite a bit for his wisdom. And I want to go to Janice Robinson now. She was my dean. She was also the person who taught me that when you're MSP dean, you have a number of constituencies. It is not just the administration, not even just the students, but you're also responsive and accountable to the alumni and to the larger community. So you have to navigate through all of those different waters. And she's probably one of our longest running deans, next to Bravo Weber, who I think is, you guys probably running neck and neck in terms of the number of years that you've been dean. But Janice was here doing some very defining moments. And is your mic working?
Can you hear me? No.
Give it, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
So, yes.
So, good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I was dean between 1986 and 1996, and the baton was passed to me from Sarah Wiggins Mitchell,
Right.
who was the first woman MSP dean. So we have to say thank you and kudos to Sarah Mitchell.
Yeah.
So let's give her a hand. I hate to say this, but I'm not a Rutgers Law School alumna.
We were trying not to mention that.
All right. And so that placed a really heavy burden on me to learn and to get steeped in this very rich culture. But before I go on, I'd like to know how many current students are here right now. Stand up. Stand up. Just want to, thank you. Thank you for being here. Give them a hand, because you are our future. And you may sit down. So I think we're talking about who we admitted. I can't recall all of the names that I obviously admitted, but I do want to give a shout out to the Honorable Esther Salas, who was our first Latina district court judge in New Jersey. So I'll take a little credit there for him. When we think, well, you know what? And while I'm at it, those of you in the room, I can see you, who I admitted, stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. All right. Challenges very quickly. The challenges continued. And so it was post-Bakke, which was 1978. During my tenure, it was the Hopwood, Cheryl Hopwood against the University of Texas, Austin, was coming up. And although it never went to the U.S. Supreme Court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled upon it. And even though the Fifth Circuit really covers 3 states, it rattled the entire country. And many law schools who had excellent programs were starting to re-examine what they should do. But we moved forward. We continued to move forward. And the challenges that I inherited were really layered. So of course, in terms of the students, and we had a diverse student body, and we had to keep the socioeconomically disadvantaged white students, as we call them, in the program. And they were very much a part of the program. And they often were our eyes and ears to other parts of the school. And so they were very much, and continue to be, part of the program. And we took a tremendous amount of pride. And I have to say, I think that decision comes from Al Slocum. When he was faculty here, and I'm seeing you nodding your head over there, when there was a decision about what to do. Do we go forward and continue this program? This was back in the late 70s, before I got here. Or how do we do this? And so we expanded the program so that it's race and class. And we were really ahead of the curve on that. And so kudos to the deans and the faculty that were here at the time and who continue. I see some wonderful friends who were here at the time as well. The faculty, it was really important, as Oliver said, to nourish those relationships. We had a wide range of faculty, but I wanted the faculty to make sure that they took pride in our students and that they knew who they were. And from time to time, I'd run up to their office and say, is so-and-so in your class? You need to know about this internship or this particular job or that they're doing well. I must say that with all of the challenges that were going on nationally, I never once was called into a faculty meeting where the program was questioned. It's never questioned at all. So I never had to spend political energy in those ways. There was a real understanding, and it was in the DNA of our faculty about what this was about and how to continue it, even through the challenges and the changes that ultimately had to come with the program. The students. There were always challenges for all of us, making sure that our students were doing well academically, but also that we were cognizant of what their lives were like, and that they had issues with finances, personal relationships, studying, transportation, all of what you know. And to make sure that those experiences were balanced with understanding that they had to produce, and they had to be good students, but also not to lose themselves, that they were admitted because we just opened the door for you. We just opened the door for you. You stepped in and you went on, all right? And sometimes in fits and starts, but always successfully. So thank you. And it's not just an inside job. It was an outside job as well. So it was working with our legislators. It was working with the various ethnic bar associations, working with the law firms in public interest, working with other schools. And I sometimes felt like I was running like a decapitated chicken, but it was to do all of that to continue to undergird the program and to make sure that it went forward. So I'm going to stop at the moment and pass it on back to Marcia.
Well, thank you, Janice, for that. And
now, wait. I'm going to tell a tale on you, Marcia. I'm going to tell a tale on you, Marcia.
Because you were my dean and you were one of the longest-running deans, everybody has a Janice Robinson story, a Dean Robinson story. My story is that because I was an evening student, I had come back after having dropped out of law school, and Jan admitted me, and I was an evening student at that. And at the end of my tenure, when I was about to graduate, she challenged me to submit an application to the Chief Justice of the New Jersey Supreme Court to clerk. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. I am not gonna get selected for this position. But she challenged me, she dared me to do it. And that was sort of how her, that was sort of her leadership style. She would never let you not believe in yourself. And I did it and I got the job. So I mean, I think that, that was a testament to her. I could also tell a David Harris story too, but I won't deal with you, David, right now. Let me go to Kenny and Yvette. They both came back to the school and to this position after having successful careers. And they came back to, it wasn't about title or position, it certainly wasn't about money. Because the MSP Dean position has never been a position about money. So, and you guys came back at a time when the issue of rankings was percolating and, the struggle for stronger alumni support. So talk about your years, starting with Kenny. Talk about your years as Dean.
First of all, good afternoon. Thank you. I do have a Janice Robinson story.
That wasn't part of the deal.
Huh?
That wasn't
no, but
part of the deal.
it's a good one. I think when she was dean, you were just starting the judicial externship programs, and so she forwarded my resume to a district court judge at that point, and I went and interviewed, and that person ended up being, and I knew it at the time after I met her, I got to be an extern for Judge Sotomayor. And I spent like 6 months with her, and it was the most amazing experience. And you sort of she's such an amazing woman that she remembers anyone that's in extern or clerked with her and everything else. And I remember at some function where my mother was at, and she told my mother he's the best extern I've ever had from Rutgers Law School. And the sense of pride that my mother had at that point. So thank you for that opportunity. In 2001, I get a call from a fellow alum. His name is Nelson Perez, class of '96. And he tells me the MSP position is open. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you should apply. I'm like, why aren't you applying? And so we get into this whole conversation. He says, do you remember that before we graduated, you said you would one day come back and serve as MSP Dean? And I was like, yeah, I guess I did. And the reason that I had said that was because of the impact the program had on my life and the impact that Jan Robinson had on my life. And so my decision to come back, and then we had a long discussion, Nelson and I, was because since she left, we had great deans, but there'd been a lot of turnover. And I think Gratz and Gruder were looming up there, and I felt there was a need for stability. And I had the flexibility in my own personal life where I knew I can dedicate a few years to the program. And I remember during my interview, they asked, how long do you plan to stay? And I said, well, at least to see one class that I select graduate, and I meant evening class, so at a minimum 4 years. Because I think the program needed that kind of stability. And so my return was because I felt I owed it to the program, to give back and to serve. And so once I got here, I think one of the things that was clear would be a challenge is that the minority student program was very different when I was here, in that it was no longer an admissions program. It was a post-admissions program. The standard that was used for MSP was now sort of a general standard where we focus on your experiences, and so everyone got to apply and sort of check off that box. And so to me, it was important to find a way to re-energize not only the students, but the alumni in sort of bringing back sort of the vigor in which we really believed in the program. And let me just say that there were some challenges, but the professors were instrumental in sort of helping that happen. And I do want to thank who was our dean, Dean Stewart Deutsch, who's over here, who was very supportive of the program and everything that we tried to do. But as I learned quickly, and what I think Wade has said and Jan has said, you have to be very politically astute when you're in this position. You have to know all your constituencies. You do have to know how you get to bring everyone together to sort of continue to move the program forward. And the people here have always been very, very supportive of the minority student program. And that's always been critical in order for it to be successful. And so one of the things that I recall in terms of challenges was, at least in the first 2-3 years with Gratz and Grutter looming, is sort of a lot of discussions of what happens if it doesn't go our way. And how do we save the program? What is it? What are things that we have to do to make sure that the program continues to survive and go on after that? Fortunate for us, that didn't happen, but you had a lot of people who were determined to make sure the program existed, survived, and continued to thrive even if the decision didn't go our way. And then after that, we started looking more and more about what did the class look like? What was the makeup of the class? And sort of focusing more and more when we were doing admissions decisions on those experiences and making sure that those experiences is what carries sort of our decision-making process. We had to deal sort of a lot with the fact that there are rankings and sort of the balance of how do we sort of maintain that ranking, but at the same time make sure we stay true to our principle of the program. And like I said, we worked hard, and there were times where we, at least because of that commitment, I think during my tenure, where at least 40% of the student body was students of color. And that's a tribute not only to the admissions committee, to the faculty, to the dean, to the administrators who allowed us to do that. And so, like I said, those are some of the challenges, but we continue to thrive, and we'll continue doing that in years to come.
Thank you, Kenny. Rhasheda?
Hi. Hello. I came, unlike many of the other MSP deans, I came to this position after having had quite a long career doing other things. I had been a teacher, I had practiced law, I was a dean of students at another law school, and I remember thinking at that point, what is it that I want to do with the rest of my career? And I heard about the minority student program, and I thought this would be perfect. These students are who I am, same kind of background, first generation college, parents with grade school educations who didn't speak English, who worked really, really hard to provide for family. And I thought, how perfect for me to be able to engage with those students. So that's what brought me here. I also want to give a shout out to Dean Deutsch, who was my first dean here. And she's not here right now, she'll be there tonight. To Associate Dean Fran Bouchou, who was instrumental in helping me. But I also want to say that, although like Kenny, I came to the position after there had been a period of change and people who hadn't been here this long. I have to say that the 4 people who are on this stage now were people who were my mentors. So I didn't feel that I was doing this by myself, because I could go back, all of them, to talk about what did you do, what was that like, how did you handle this kind of situation, so that family, I know we talk about family, we talk about our relationship with students, but the camaraderie, and Marcia too, I don't mean to leave her out, because she was also incredibly instrumental to me in my role as the MSP dean. So and then after the first year, we got Dean Chen back from his position as the public advocate, so I had this other person here to help. When I came in 2008, guess what happened in 2008? That was that financial crisis. Things fell, the bottom fell out of the job market. Everybody was, do we even need attorneys? Who's going to get a job after this? So I think one of the challenges for me was, how do we work on getting jobs for these MSP students? And I talked a little bit about how that has happened and the things that had to go into getting that. And I feel that we've come so far, but it took this amazing. Well, one of the things I'll tell you, I looked when I first came, and we had an MSP endowment, which actually Oliver had started when he was the dean of MSP, but it didn't have that much money in it. So one of the things we did early on was to start this, have a group of alumni, kind of, I think we called it the legacy campaign. So Oliver, Kim Banks McKay, David Harris, Kathleen Conkey, who I see here. There were a group of MSP alumni who got together to contact their classmates, and we were able to, at that point, raise a couple of $100,000 in not a very long period of time that we then used in the endowment to pay for summer internships. So there was such an incredible desire on the part of everyone to make sure that this program continued to be sustained. Another challenge that I see for MSP, and I think that everybody has touched on upon it, is how do we, given the changes in the legal landscape, the changes in the society, how do we stay true to the reasons that MSP existed? How do we stay true to the fact that these same students, same types of students have that opportunity to come here? Obviously, there have been changes. I think the recognition that socioeconomic status plays an enormous part in opportunity. People poor people are discriminated against. And we recognized that very early on and expanded. We expanded to include students who on the basis of race, like Muslim students, face discrimination. All the LGBTQ students who face all kinds of obstacles, so that the program has been able to expand to include, but my concern is that we continue to do what we set out to do.
And Yvette, I think that the questions that you're raising are the ones that probably Rhasheda is grappling with right now.
Correct.
As she births really a new program in the South, and I wonder if you can just...
Can I just say one
one
more thing. Another thing, and this is going to sound like a strange word, or maybe not, love. Love. I think that every dean up here loves the students that they work with. So creating that relationship with them and that kind of understanding of them is something that really helps this program as well.
Thank you.
Well, as you've mentioned earlier, the benefit of having mentors. I've had the chance to have Yvette as a mentor, which has been very beneficial to me, as well as David Trout has been someone who's been very supportive of me in my role, as well as Dean Jill Friedman, who's here, and Michael Cahill. So I've been surrounded by people at the law school who have been very supportive of MSP. The challenge that I have is making sure that MSP becomes enmeshed in the culture at the law school, and also making sure that we develop a culture at the law school that embraces MSP. I have heard, some things from students that some of them don't feel that they are as welcomed as at the law school as other students, and I think that's a part of just the growth that the program has to go through and becoming a part of the norm there in Camden. The other issue that I've had, which I don't have an endowment fund just yet, is trying to help develop a culture of philanthropy amongst the alums, and I'm guilty of it. As I mentioned earlier, I graduated from the law school in Camden in 2002, went to work at a law firm, and I did not give back to the law school. I came to the Bossa dinner every year. I showed up for a couple of different dinners, but I never gave to the law school. I don't think I realized the urgency and the need that's there now with the students. And as the MSP dean, actually last semester, I had a student, very talented, has the grit, has the potential to do very well in the profession, come to me and say that I may have to withdraw this semester. And that experience for me was eye-opening, because I think it just really highlighted the fact that the economic gap within this country continues to widen, and you don't have the funds from the state that are going to be there to provide grants and other sorts of support to our students. So it's especially essential that we have alum who give back. And I don't mean to sound like a telethon here to say even if it's $30 a month that you give, over a year that'd be $300. And if we had 10 alums that did that, that's $3,000 that we can have in scholarship funds to give to our students. I think at this time we really have to walk the walk and not only talk the talk, because people are really quick to talk about the importance of diversity and inclusion, right? And we oftentimes, one thing I was able to do in private practice is to have my firm give funds back to like Balsa or Alianza. But as I said, I never reached into my pocket, but would go to the mall and shop and do whatever else I needed to do. And so I think until we really have our alums grasp the level of need that our students are coming to us with now, and understanding how it's critical that they have that support in order to be successful, to stay there at the law school and not have them withdraw, that's what's going to be a priority for me, one of my many. And I'm happy to hear all of the different challenges that you all have had and how you felt like you were a chicken with your head cut off at one time, Janice, and running around and trying to make sure that you touch these different points and develop relationships with different parts of your constituents. I'm in the same boat, and I'm thankful now to actually meet all of you in person, and I've been taking notes the whole time that you all have been speaking, because you've inspired me to continue and to know that, yes, this is hard work, but keep doing it because the payout is immeasurable. So.
Thank you for that, and thank you. Thank you. We're obviously closing down now. We don't want to stand between you all and food, but this has really been a special moment, and I want to, as I thank the deans who are here, the faculty who are here, would you please stand up? Because if you haven't studied the beginning of this program and the people who support the deans and support the students, and who on that fateful day in 1968 or 69, when they all gathered together and birthed this program and struggled and figured out how would we create something called the MSP. Those faculty were some of the baddest dudes and women, you know, on the scene. And so I just want to thank them, and also we're giving out the Paul Trachtenberg's 100-year history of the law school, which also talks about the MSP, to say thank you to these 6 people who carried this program on their backs over the last 37 years. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Everybody.